Hello everyone, I am RazmaGaming. I am a Challenger TFT player in North America, and this is an item guide for set 4.5, patch 11.3, and let's jump right into it. Starting off with AD items. AD meaning attack damage, meaning people who like to auto attack and do their damage like with that. Tristana, Wukong, Yasuo, Zed, Kalista, Shyvana, Sivir. Those are the early to mid game units that I would throw these type of items on that to carry you to get to the late game. A couple of combinations you should know about here is the Deathblade and Hurricane combo. Because Deathblade and Hurricane work so well together, it's a fantastic item combination to get. The Deathblade stacks when they get an assist on a kill. Since Hurricane lets them hit two separate people, it's very, very strong for letting Deathblade stack really fast and getting insanely high AD amounts on one champion. For transitioning these sort of items into the late game, Olaf, Talon, Tryndamere, Zyre, and Samir are all going to be viable carries with these items. I think the Zyre would be a little bit of the outlier here. She's decent with like straight AD items, but she's not like fantastic. Any of these other units could use any of these items absolutely fantastically, and it would work perfectly fine. If you do end up with like a chosen Xayah for itemization, Hand of Justice is your best bet with her, since Xayah does AD and AP damage, and that can buff either AD and AP, or give the healing off of AD and AP. Alright, so that's with the AD items. So now let's move over to the AP items. Gunblade, Deathcap, Jeweled Gauntlet, Hodge, and Giant Slayer. Once again, we have Hodge and Giant Slayer here, just like they were on the AD items. The Hodge and Giant Slayer can literally go on any unit that you have trying to deal damage, and they will help it, because it doesn't matter what type of damage they're dealing, they just deal more damage overall. Now, for these items, there are a lot of different champions I have listed, but the ones I'd really want to look at here are Nidalee, Teemo, and then the Kindred. I think these are probably the three best holders of these type of items early game. All these other units are viable, but I would only probably do it if I hit a really early 2-star, or have like a chosen of one of them. Getting those items on any of these would then let you transition to one of these kind of carries in the bottom. The Aurelion Sol, Kayle, Morgana, Set, Swain, and Yone. Aurelion Sol absolutely loves Gunblade and Jeweled Gauntlet. Kayle is more of an attack speed carry, which I go over a little later in the video, but if you have an extra AP item, any of these can work on Kayle as well, and she does well. Morgana's favorite item isn't listed here, it's listed farther down, is a Morellonomicon. But again, any of these extra AP items and she'll do well. Set, Swain, and Yone, anything here is fantastic. So these are just good items that if you ended up making one of these, this is the type of unit you'd want to put it on late game. Now, for tank items, we're moving over to, I didn't list the early game tanks. I didn't list it because early game tanks, there are just too many. Any 2-star Brawler, any 2-star Vanguard, any 2-star Keeper, something like a Vladimir, Nasus, anything that's really going to be a frontline unit can use any of these tank items very, very well. My favorite combination for early game tank items is the Sunfire Cape and Ionic Spark. If you have those two items on like a 2-star chosen frontliner, or even just a 2-star frontliner with like a Vanguard with another Vanguard, Brawler and another Brawler, those items can carry you by themselves. Any of these would be good on it. Now down here I listed probably the best units for the late game to put these on. I think my absolute favorite out of all of these would be Aatrox. If you end up playing a Vanguard frontline, Aatrox with your tank items is going to be your go-to. 100%. If you end up playing Brawlers, Cho'Gath or Set are really good with them. If you end up with the Adept frontline, Irelia or Shen. Normally I would do Shen since he's more of the straight tank, but Irelia is not bad if you have like a 2-star or a chosen Irelia. You can put him on her and be perfectly fine. And then Swain's on here because Swain can literally just use like any kind of items and still be a very, very useful unit. So he's just here just so you guys can see, you know, you're not wrong to put one of these items on him. One thing I just realized that I shouldn't have here, this Zerat portal should never go on set. I put it there, that's a mistake. I might fix this graphic, I'm not sure. Set and a Zerat portal should never happen, because Set's always your last unit to die because he leaves the battlefield and comes back at the end. Don't put a Zerat portal on Set. Any of these other items, you're fine with that. So now we're going to go over to the aura items. The aura items are a little different in the fact that, like, you can put them on any unit early game. I chose just a couple right here to just kind of show what I mean. So if you end up playing like sharpshooters early game, Tristana or Teemo, hold the Zeeks, hold the Chalice, hold the Locket, it doesn't matter. I would personally like the items on Teemo if I'm not playing like straight Teemo carry for the auras. If you end up playing Mage early game, Brand is probably a good user of it, but I mean TF, even Veigar, if you hit the Veigar, like, the aura items just scale extremely well into the late game, and you can put them on anybody early game and be fine with that. Now, if we move over to, like, the late game, again, this isn't a definitive list. This is just the type of units you'd put it on depending on your board. So if you're ending up with, like, a Kayle, like, you're ending up with Kayle carry, Kindred holding the aura items is fantastic. You buff your Kayle with the Kindred's aura items, and then you still have Kayle carry items after that. If you're playing some sort of like defensive type build with a lot of Vanguards, or just like a Yuumi for 2-spirit backline, Yuumi can hold these items perfectly fine as well. Normally, I wouldn't put the Zeeks on the Yuumi unless there's no one better, but like the Chalice, so Yuumi starts with more mana, is fantastic. If you end up playing like Slayers, Duelists, Warlords, Tryndamere getting the aura items so he has some extra stats himself, plus buffing whoever your main carry is also very good. So one of the things I really like to do is I play a lot of Slayers. I play a lot of Olaf and Samira carry Slayers, and I'll pop the aura items on Tryndamere, and that's my 3 Slayer combo. Olaf, Samira, Tryndamere. Tryndamere gives the aura items, Olaf and Samira get the carry items. Works fantastically. And then anytime you throw an Azir in, he can use any of the aura items, he can be a holder for it, and it works fine. Now, the aura items is not a definitive list. As long as you're not throwing the aura items on whoever's supposed to be your main carry, and you can actually use them on someone who can then buff your main carry, it's gonna be fine. These are just sort of ideas that like you can use to then go farther with it. So now, those are like the 4 main types of items. I'm going to go into now like more specific items here, because there were a lot of items on these lists that I didn't list yet. So, a Guardian Angel. A Guardian Angel early game can be put on literally anybody that, if they somehow get popped early in the fight, coming back can give you a better chance at winning. Something like a Diana and a Kali if you're playing Assassins early game. Your backline sharpshooter damage dealer if you're playing sharpshooters, you know, Tristana, Nidalee, they can all use it very, very well. Going into the late game, these are the carries that prefer a GA as their defensive item. So if we go back to like AD items here, if you want like Deathblade, Hurricane on Olaf or on Talon or IE Talon, any of that, and then you wanted that like one defensive item, Guardian Angel is the defensive item you want to play on like Olaf, on Talon, on Xayah, on Samira. It's normally better than like the QSS or the Trapclaw. These two are just up here so I could write the Guardian Angel out. There's nothing different about them. Same exact thing though. They like the Guardian Angel. Aurelion Sol and Yone, both very good with it. Samira, Swain, Lee Sin. This is everyone in the late game who Guardian Angel would be a very, very good defensive item for. If we go to the Quicksilver Sash now, it changes quite a bit. Aurelion Sol and Yone can still use the QSS and be perfectly fine. It's good on Aurelion Sol because you can stick him in the corner and then he stays in the corner no matter what. Same thing with Yone, it stops Yone from getting CC'd so he gets his ult off and can just keep going. Now, you see I have a lot of 1 and 2, like 1, 2, and 3 costs here for Quicksilver Sash. I would only do the QSS if you're going to be playing the reroll version of one of these units. Tristana, Yasuo, Zed, you know, you hit them Chosen, you're going for that 3-star, and you want to get them a defensive item. Quicksilver Sash is going to be their best bet overall. Normally, I would not make a Quicksilver Sash in the early game, unless I know I'm playing the reroll version, and I know in the late game I'm going to need that. The only caveat here is Katarina. Katarina is a carry that 100% of the time needs a Quicksilver Sash. And if you're playing a Warlord start, like you hit a Warlord Garen and you know you want to go Warlords that game, making a Quicksilver Sash to put it on your Katarina later is definitely a good idea. And then Kale's favorite defensive is a Quicksilver Sash because Adept really screws Kale. And quick QSS turns Adept off, so no longer gets slowed by it, and she's just not affected. Now, move over to more of a utility / damage item in blue buff. I have a lot of units listed all over. This isn't even like the full definitive list. This is just if you throw a blue buff on one of these units in the early game, you're going to be perfectly fine, and then transitioning it to the late game on one of these type of units is also fine. Yumi with a blue buff is a perfectly fantastic unit. I mean, she gets the heals off and gives the attack speed so much faster with the blue buff, it's great. Aurelion Sol, Morgana for the 4-cost carries. If you already have a good damage item or 2, so say like Aurelion Sol, you already have like Gunblade, Jeweled Gauntlet, and you want like a 3rd item on him, and you didn't get a GA or a QSS, blue buff so he just gets his ult out faster is very good, and sort of the same deal with Morgana. Azir, Lee Sin, Yone, Zillion, all 5 costs that can use it very well. So whichever one fits in your team comp, and if you have a blue buff, pop it on one of them, and they're all very good with it. So move over to the other mana item, Spear of Sojin. This item I would not make unless 1, you were playing Revolt Nidalee, because otherwise Sojin just does not work that well. Really, it's only good on sharpshooters because of the way the bounces work with getting the 5 mana per hit. Every bounce gives the 5 mana. So like if you have just even 2 sharpshooters, every auto attack is hitting 3 units. That means every auto attack is getting 15 mana. So it's good on sharpshooters like Nidalee, Teemo, even Sivir, because getting her ult out faster means she does a lot more damage and gives attack speed to everybody. But unless you know you're sticking sharpshooters somehow, Sojin's probably not that good. Now, if you end up with like a sword and a tier as your last 2 components, Aurelion Sol, Azir, Zillion, they're all not bad with it, but it's just not something that I would do most of the time. So now another more niche item, Ginsu's Rageblade. Now I say niche, but if you look, there's a lot of units here that I have that can use it. If you build a Ginsu's, you are most likely going to want to play Kale. Ginsu's Rageblade is Kale's literal favorite item. Kale loves attack speed, Kale loves AP, Ginsu's gives both. Now, all these early game units up here can use it. The best, I feel, would probably be like Teemo, Kalista, or Kindred. Shyvana wouldn't be bad, Sivir wouldn't be bad, but those are like 3 costs, that's more mid-game anyway. Most of the like 1 costs would be okay with it. Tristana's pretty good because she has like her own AD steroid, and the duelists because they get the extra attack speed. Normally though, I wouldn't do that unless I know, okay, I have a Ginsu, I want to try to go Kale this game. So you just slam it and go. That's okay. In the late game though, so say like you were going to pivot and you hit a chosen Olaf. And you have a Ginsu, but you also have some sort of AD item that you could put on the Olaf. That is perfectly fine. If you get him something else like a Hurricane, Deathblade, an IE, a Hodge, you can still play Ginsu Olaf, and it's pretty good. So as long as you have one of the other items Olaf can use as well, you can pop this item on him. Same thing with like Morgana, Talon, Xayah. It's Samira. it's not like the best item for them, but it still works. So if you just end up in the late game with one of these units and you can throw that item on it, do it. Don't always try to get perfect items. Just being able to do something like this that's not ideal but still good is a very, very strong thing. So I'm going to go over to the Morello. I'm going to just go straight to Morgana first. Morgana's absolute best item is Morellonomicon. Because the way her ability works, how it stays on the ground and it keeps ticking, and then it keeps reapplying the Morello, it is extremely strong on her. If you can get a Morello Morgana and then just other AP, it's fantastic. Now, in order to get to like who you would use it on late game, Tristana, I know it seems weird, actually isn't bad with it. When she has her ult up and it's doing the magic damage, it actually applies the Morello burn. So she applies it to multiple people at once with the sharpshooter bounces. Nasus is okay. He only hits one unit at a time, and normally you want to put Morello on somebody who can hit multiple units at a time. But if you ever chosen Nasus and you have a Morello or something, and you're not going to play Evil Nasus, that's a good idea. Teemo, same deal as Tristana with the sharpshooter bounces. Pyke, his ult hits multiple people, applies the burn. Aurelian Cannon, same deal, applies the burn. So late game, if you don't play the Morello on Morgana, you ended up with a different team comp. Cho'Gath, Sejuani, Azir, Ornn, Swain, Yone. These are all very, very good units with it. All you're looking for is someone with an AoE ult that applies the burn to multiple people. Kayle here, really, she's not that good with the Morello. Like, she can use it, but you'd want other items for Kayle, because normally if you're playing Kayle, she's going to be your main carry. And you want either more AP or more attack speed for Kayle. Alright, so now we move over to something like the Bloodthirster. I put it off separately here because it's not an item that I would normally make in the early game on like one of these carries just to do it. But it is an item that in the later stages of the game on one of these AD carries is very, very strong if it's like some of your last components and you don't know what else you'd want to do. So if you do want to build one early game, like you get a 2-item start, pretty much all the regular AD champions that I listed here can also use a Bloodthirster. I actually left out the Shyvana. She can use it as well. But then transitioning to the late game, it's again the 5 core AD champions. Olaf, Talon, Tryndamere, Xayah, Samira. They can all use it quite well. If you want extra healing, if you just have those 2 last components, throw a Bloodthirster on one of them, you're pretty good. Now, the RFC, the Rapid Fire Cannon. This is Kayle and Olaf's bread and butter item. If you can get multiple bows and you can get either Kayle or Olaf with one of these, slamming it in the early game is almost always worthwhile. And I just listed pretty much every unit up here that can use it semi-well. They all benefit from the extra range and the extra attack speed. And then you can transition into your Kayle, your Olaf. If you hit a chosen Talon and you have extra AD items, again, Talon can use it. Lee Sin gets the ranged kick people, very fantastic. Samira, great. Yone, he can actually use his ult from farther away and not be right in the front. Very, very good. Rapid Fire is probably one of the best items right now, but it's also one that needs other items to work with it. Like, you need to make sure your carry has some sort of damage item. So for Kayle, you would need like a Jeweled Gauntlet, the Ginsu preferably. For Olaf, you would need like a Hurricane or an AD item. Same thing with Talon. So it's not like great by itself, but it's still probably the best item overall for these carries. Now, I have Titans listed in the tank items here, as well as just by itself, because there's a couple units I just wanted to highlight. Diana with Assassin and Titans is fantastic. Nasus with Titans is fantastic. Yasuo with Titans, as long as you get like an Infinity Edge on him as well if you're playing Evil, fantastic. Annie and Jax, same deal. Katarina, as long as you're playing 2 Assassins and her ult can then crit, fantastic with Titans. Then the other ones are just the main tanks that I already had in the tank section to use the Titans. So I just wanted to highlight those couple of extra units that can really use the Titans well. And then here we have the assorted rest of the items that I didn't list anywhere else. Zephyr and Shroud are both very, very strong items, but they require positioning and good game knowledge to get the best use out of them. So if you're just starting out with TFT or something like that, I wouldn't really suggest using them. The Thieves Glove, if you get extra gloves, Thieves Glove can go on any tank line, any frontliner, any secondary carry, and it'll still be good. Because you get those 2 extra items out of it, which is very, very strong. It's just a good overall item. It can literally go on almost anybody. Now, Frozen Heart, Gargoyle Stoneplate, and Warmogs. These are items that most of the time I would not slam unless I absolutely have to in the end game, or I ended up with like having like 4 belts or something and I have to make a Warmog. They really just go on any tank, or like the Frozen Heart can go on an assassin to jump to the backline, but these 2 would just go on a tank. Trapclaw and Redemption are 2 kind of niche items. I would never make them in the early game, but in the late game they do have very, very strong uses. But you'd have to know what you're doing with them, and for the most part, I wouldn't suggest slamming them. I wouldn't suggest making them unless they're the last items. For Redemption, put it on a frontliner who's gonna die pretty fast. And for Trapclaw, it goes on normally like your carry as a defensive item if you didn't get a GA or a QSS. Now the last 2 items here, Luden's Echo and Static Shiv, I would make them under almost no circumstances, really. If they're your last item, okay, like if all you have is a tier and a rod and you're not getting any more component items, or a tier and a bow, then for Luden's Echo, anyone who uses mana and AP, throw it on them. And for Shiv, anyone who would like mana or attacks fast with attack speed, throw it on them. Otherwise, I think they're just poor items right now. They're not that good, and there's really no good uses for them. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that video and it helps you out in TFT. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below, or visit me on stream at twitch.tv/RazmaGaming. I'm live 6 days a week, focusing on educational TFT content. I'm planning on getting more video guides up soon, and I hope to see you on the next one, so bye-bye!